I'm reading your weight limits here on the first page.
Yeah.
The state has also identified certain types of structures and roads for posting at 16,000 pound load limit. Well, that is all timber.
Yeah.
Either covered bridges or timber structure of some sort.
So in there, should have, at least I should have put it where it looked like, accounted for class 2 roads as well.
That's 1 and 2. That doesn't say that. Maybe you're further on. Maybe. Yeah, class 2, 3, 4. Yeah, class 2 ought to be a different weight than 3, 4. At least in the city. Class 1, main, class 2. Hey, Bill. How goes it? They are reading all this technical stuff. Quoting statutes. None of them that were written that you can understand.
That's part of legislative council's role is to make certain that
This could do.
they're difficult to understand. That's
So I see on the first street here. Here it says 2018. That, and up here it says December 21st, when it was done calculated. And they used the 2013 data, right?
Yeah.
To do that. But I looked at the dates they did that. It's only a Tuesday, Wednesday. So Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, probably busier. I understand their point,
yeah.
but
I think that's some things that we can touch on, which is they did send us a conclusion that no flood anymore.
yes, I saw that at the bottom.
And so that's, for me, that was a surprise, but
Well,
I did want to reserve some judgment before we did a thorough review on its face. Raises good questions.
Yeah.
So
on volume, only on traffic, they said that. They also said, before the conclusion, in summary, a state issue. Okay. Down there on the page. First or second page.
I probably, because I have that whole package.
Yeah. It's the weather. Yeah. So, oh yeah, it's 6:30.
Yeah, it does not appear we have a quorum at the moment. Unless I'm missing someone.
Michael, I'll see who I have on my phone and can text.
So I thought the committee was 5.
There are 6 of us. And so that was a mistake that I made a couple of meetings ago. We realized it and rectified our one order of business, or the one thing that we actually moved, which was the minutes in the meeting where there were 3 of us. So since there are 6, we need 4. Yeah, I had asked for the members who couldn't make it to let me know that they couldn't make it. So hopefully they I suppose in the future we can create a meeting invite or something that's going to keep this on people's radar.
Those who work also for the operators.
Yes, so, if need be found, actually, you can also, yeah, right. We're within the weight range for the case. So I'm from the case, I probably throw in the ball. With the ball.
I don't have Giuliano's cell phone. Does anybody there have his cell phone?
I do not,
I can send an email to the membership just to as a reminder that there's a meeting. I'll take that step.
I texted Joanne and emailed Josh. That was quite the snow event, Bill.
it lingered for sure. I think we were really expecting about 8 inches. We certainly got closer to 12. And it ended up getting, it was a real mealy snow. Eli and I had a very interesting conversation about lubricity in snow and how salt, because it actually raises the moisture content in the snow, it makes it actually more slippery than if it was dry. So if you can have dry granular snow, it's better than the mushy stuff we get. Unfortunately, if it turns into hard packing ice, then that coefficient of friction goes down. So there's this thing we've got to get drivers to recognize is the roads might be wet and slushy, but stopping distances really get extended, and people just don't see it. So.
All right, I sent an email. Apologies to those of you who are here who are also receiving the email. Just send it to everyone. Figure we'll give people 10 minutes. I think 15 minutes past the start of the meeting is is fair. Cannot call the meeting to order, but I think it's possible for us to go over some of the things that we would address in a full meeting, even though we can't take any action on it. Trying to think about how we would ideally want to proceed with that, though.
That's fine by me. I assume that it would all be informational and no formal action could be recognized.
Yeah, exactly. Which is unfortunate because both of these items are things that we would really like to be able to take an action as a committee on. Well, we can focus on some informational stuff, which at the very least, we can skip ahead to section 5, which is departmental report and any new resident concerns that have come up. We can at least become aware of those things. I think the department report is very simple. It's it's included in there. Not sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Our focus at this time of year is typically just trying to make sure that we're addressing road conditions. We did have the fact that there was a sign missing on Hill Street for the advanced railroad crossing pointed out to us by one of the state railroad staff, and we were able to get it replaced in 3 days or so. We actually have no record of the sign going missing, but they were actually able to supply us a photograph of the sign's location. We put it back in the same approximate spot, but we couldn't find even the old anchor. So we presume that it was an accident that took it away, and perhaps the accident person who did it actually carried it with him, essentially taking the evidence along, because we didn't even know it was gone. And then we've had a couple of crosswalk signs that have been flattened by drivers. In fact, the one on Hill and Perry was flattened by someone going uphill, taking the left-hand turn onto Perry, up over the curve.
Oh,
So that was a surprise. We would have understood if someone came over the crest of the hill and was surprised by the turn, but this was something in plain sight with an uphill lie, and they were able to lose control and go up onto the sidewalk. So it's remarkable.
yeah, lose control being a bit of a euphemism there. Yeah, I mean, do you think that that's indicative of a need for other landscaping? Because I mean, and I expect that probably this is happening at a time of day when it's not likely that there are pedestrians present. But anyway, I guess it's food for thought.
Yeah, I think we were looking at gate posting to try to make it really apparent, but sometimes even that doesn't work. So right now, I think we have signs on each side. I'm not sure that we actually gate posted it. We can look into that, but I don't know what else we might do other than adding something that just gave more weight to the sidewalk. The adjacent landowner there really did not want anything put in the way of a green strip, and asked specifically that we not, because we had considered instead of concreting all the way back at that particular intersection, back all the way to the stone wall, we had looked at the idea of putting some landscaping in, and then because he asked specifically not for grass, we were going to use a colored landscaping stone, and then it would have been suitable for some bushes. But the better part of meeting local needs was to just let it go as it is. Salt, the good news is we're way ahead of budget. We really should have been more in the range of 40 to 45% anyway, and we're actually down around 25% of our total salt budget. And so keep my fingers crossed we don't have anything outside of an average year from here out, and we should see an underrun of somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000 on the budgeted amount.
And has anything else come in terms of residents noticing things?
So there haven't been any new concerns reported to us. One of the things that we were looking at as we prepared our annual report summary was how many times we'd actually received citizen concerns in the last year. And we logged, I think it was 963 calls to Public Works. And as we're in the marketing of C-Click Fix, we're hopeful that we can transition at least a third of those away from phone calls and into a report that's in a digital format.
That's pretty exciting. Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Bill, did you say 923?
963.
963.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Art.
I just want to let Bill know his stop signs at Enterprise Alley there look nice, or Merchant Road. Right where
That
they're
is
supposed
great.
to- The stop
I-
sign, and then the pedestrian crossing up above.
Yeah, I haven't gone down to see this, but that's great. That's good. That's one of those things that was on our list. Ticked right off. I mean, I know you did it before, but it's good to have confirmation. Oh, there was a question I was going to ask. It was about, oh, phooey. Sorry, it's gone. It's out of my head.
C-click fix related?
No, it was before that. It was the first thing that Bill was saying about. Oh yes, about the railroad. When did the railroad crossing sign go missing, Jamie? Or rather, when was the last evidence it existed? Because I'm like trying to remember seeing it, and I have nothing.
The photograph that he forwarded to us was from, I believe, 2013. So it was definitely in place then. It should actually have been restored when the South Main Street paving job was done, which now is, I believe, about 4.5 years ago. Because that's when the 16,000-pound sign that was on Hill Street went missing. The state removed it because it wasn't on the registry.
Right.
I should ask if they still have it.
Yeah, we can get it back.
Yes.
Well, I think we're at our 15 minutes of leeway. Doesn't seem like anybody's showing up. I think I think we could skip to because I realized, Bill, that there's a deadline for submitting the weight limits. Well, we can't take a formal action on it. At least I feel like we should talk about it and hear what you're going to say, and then we'll circle back around for other stuff.
Sure, that sounds good. My primary interest was in getting some feedback about how to approach addressing the 16,000-pound weight limit. The reason is because it's very clear that at least all but 8 of the streets are fully within the city's jurisdiction and are named by statute as being eligible for reductions to 16,000 pounds. So the class 1 town highways are specifically 24,000 pounds, but those are roads that we would expect. US 302, both North Main Street and Washington, Vermont 14 south from Prospect, and Vermont 14 north from 62, so Maple Avenue. Those are all class 1 town highways, and we would have to show by an engineering analysis there was some lack of capacity, and those have been designed to carry the full state load. Not that we couldn't prevail, but it is unlikely. But the next class of streets that I believe could be moved to 16,000, but they're clearly identified as eligible for the 24,000 pound and preferred, are the class 2 town highways. These are the ones that we get state aid for, but they function as an undesignated collector. So we have Town Highway 4, which is Merchant Street from Vermont 14 all the way to Summer. Town Highway 5, which is Hill Street from South Main Street all the way to the town line. Quarry Street from South Main Street to the town line. And Prospect Street from the intersection with South Main all the way to the town line, which is up near the Bond baseball field. The last one is Town Highway 8, Berlin Street. So those 5 I believe we could reduce the weight limit on them. I think the way that the statute reads, it makes very clear that class 3s can be 16, and in fact are intended to be. Class 2s are kind of that middle ground, and class 1s are intended to be full state load capacity. So as I was looking at this issue, what I was looking for was how we would approach a rollout so that people could see these signs in place, and we could actually look to see what kind of response we got and examine whether or not we might find overweight loads and what we would do about them. And one of the things that there's been some discussion about is how to address overweight load enforcement. And our past police chief felt strongly that we would rely on state inspectors, and we would use our own PD to stop and detain those vehicles, and then based on the officer's assessment, we call in a weight team. Again, that saves the city some expense for a certified officer, but it also makes the likelihood of having a weight team available much less likely. So I don't think we will have a huge number of heavy overweight trucks, but I believe we clearly do have them. And I think they fall in basically 3 categories. From personal observation, I've seen trucks carrying timber that I know are well over, and the state has a modified load for forestry products that allows 90,000 pounds. But I've seen loads that are I'm very confident over 100,000. And Quebec actually uses a 106,000 pound load for its forestry products, as does Maine, and I believe New Hampshire as well. So at 90,000, Vermont is the low weight allowance for forestry on the Northeast corridor, border of Canada. So that's one category. I think the second category is trucks that are hauling aggregates. Again, because they're typically loaded by scales where there are scales, but where there aren't scales, they're loaded by volume. And those weights can vary dramatically, easily by 5 or 6%, just based on antecedent weather. If we have a lot of rain, the rain doesn't change the volume, but it adds weight. So it's an area that we know, again, is a category for that. And the last is probably stone products. I think the stone products are very careful for our own stone generators. I think they're diligent, but when they're importing, I don't know that the transmitting facility is as diligent. And again, it's kind of a general category, very close to the aggregate products, but instead it's a large bulk rock. So
I'm gonna sorry. I wanted to note that Josh is here, so we have a quorum. So I should call the meeting to order. So I think we'll. I'm sorry to stop you in the middle of that, but I think we should, go back to the agenda. Josh, just to fill you in, Joshua. Sorry. We since we didn't have quorum, we were just getting some information about topics. We were looking at 6.2. We were just talking about weight limits, but now as of 6:52, I call this meeting of the Transportation Advisory Committee to order. I'm going to assume there are no adjustments to the agenda for the sake of moving forward. If we've had a chance to review the draft minutes, if there are any corrections, let me know. If not, I would hear a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Thanks.
Second,
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor?
aye.
I'll say aye. Yeah. All right.
I forgot my camera's off. Aye.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, motion passed. The minutes are approved. We do not appear to have any visitors in communications today for things that are not on the agenda. Before the meeting was officially called to order, Bill provided, there was a brief discussion of the information that was provided in the packet on the transportation. I think that there was not much that was substantive that was outside of what's in the packet. If someone else thinks that's inaccurate, I could be corrected on that. But I was thinking we could probably move past that and assume that the packet covers it. There weren't any new any concerns that were raised. So we can move on then to our new business. Item number 1 has to do with the Merchant Street intersection that we got information about from VTrans back in November. Yeah, sorry, I don't have the right page in front of me, so I'm not. I think that's the right date. As you guys probably recall, my hope at the time was to find. I questioned the need for the left turn lane, especially in the context of the adopted city plan, and was looking for more information from VTrans to understand what the reasoning was for the warrant. Because the representative who had come to us had said that there was a warrant for the left turn there. So as you probably have had a chance to see, I did get a very helpful email back from Taylor that was essentially clarifying the questions that I provided, or that I given him in the previous email. And also they ran a new calculation of the warrant that's based on an updated formula, which is different than what they would have run the first time. And based on their current information, they're saying that based on vehicle volume at the intersection, you would expect the left turn to be warranted at 508 vehicles per hour. And the current rate is just under 300. And so based on the current information, the volume doesn't warrant it. And what he had said in the email, as you could see, was there could still be a safety reason to have the left turn lane there. I included in this it's not good information, but the sort of best that I could grab out of the map of public crash data, showing that over the last 10 years there have not been very many crashes. So my understanding is that the left turn starts to be something that you would say, is indicated once you've got expected crashes of something like 9 crashes per year at the intersection. Is that what the federal letters? I'm forgetting what the federal, the FTSHA thing. No, that's not even the right letters. I'm so sorry. I'm not an engineer, obviously. But if we're looking at a rate of something like around half a crash a year at the intersection, it doesn't seem like safety is our predominant concern at that location. But this is why I bring it to the committee to have, so that we can look at this together and say, is the design correct as it is? If it's not, is there something that we want to recommend as a change to city council? City council, if anything was recommended, would then send that to VTrans, and they would take that into consideration. Basically, that's what Taylor said last time, and so that's my rundown on where we are. Did anybody have any questions? Anything to any observations to add?
You know, Michael, thinking about the left turn lane just by itself, the things that you proposed in regards to the amount of traffic and you know the reason of it being there, it all makes sense. I think my biggest question in regards to this is looking at it by itself as just a left turn lane doesn't make a lot of sense, but everything that went along with it in regards to, you know, the safety of the road, the expansion of the road, the light posts that we're going to put inside of it, that was all included in with it. I mean, it makes sense with putting it all together. Like if we're going to, if they're looking to put the lights in to make it more safe, just for the drive itself, in general, that left-hand turn makes sense. You know, do you understand what I'm saying? It's the whole plan in one bulk that makes sense. The left turn lane by itself, of course, like you said, doesn't.
Yeah, so I guess I agree. I think that when Bill first mentioned this to me, he was like, "We're going to change the alignment of this intersection," and I was like, "That's fantastic! What a good idea!" And I still think that most of the elements of this plan are dead on and exactly. I mean, like it's a huge improvement. My question is about having that left turn lane included in the design. I think it would be better without the left turn lane, but that's, I mean, I'm coming into it with that as, you know, as my perspective, but I don't, you know, I'm just one person.
I thought one of the things that was an important observation was that Taylor's conclusion appears to have changed. And so the earlier analysis, interestingly enough, it was reportedly using 2014 data. I suspect it was actually 2013 data. Drew a different conclusion. And there have been changes in design standards over the course of the past 8 years. And so the finding that the left turn doesn't actually receive a warrant is a significant issue for us. And so it is something that we can open the door on with V-Trans and have a discussion about the left turn lane role in the project. So for instance, if we could still have a street light that illuminated the intersection well and obtain improved visibility, we may well get most of the benefits. I haven't reviewed the change in conclusion heavily. I think one of the things that I'd like to ask Taylor more about is why we seem to have substituted actual traffic counts for design hourly volumes, and how does that affect the decision making? So again, it may be a perfectly reasonable thing to do in the context of how the formula were developed and should be executed, but truly it's beyond my understanding at this point. And again, I think the question really needs to be posed, and I'm not certain that I'm ready to say the answer is the elimination of the left turn lane, but on its face, that seems to be what the state is suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's, oh, go ahead, Jake.
Just had a question about how much money would it save to eliminate the left turn lane at this point? Or could those elements of the project be reallocated to other amenities, like getting a sidewalk in place around the inside curve, in anticipation that maybe we would be able to run a sidewalk up Berlin, or not Berlin Street, up Maple Street one day, and down the length of Merchant Street.
So we can ask that question. What I'd offer is that the amount of pavement and the amount of subbase would be decreased literally by that transition and the lane itself, which is probably a 300-foot plus length, and would be essentially a full lane width at that length. So, 300 feet of a lane of street is easily going to cost somewhere between $70,000 and $90,000. And so the trade-off into sidewalk, $90,000 probably buys you close to 1,000 feet of sidewalk. Right now we have sidewalk on Maple, but it ends just at about the corner of, it's not Farwell, Brook Street, takes a right turn and actually meets Maple at that there's an old bridge. And that's where the sidewalk on Maple ends. So from there up to Merchant Street is probably a little bit more than 1,000 feet.
I think it goes up a little further, actually. I walked it not too long ago. I can't remember. It's very overgrown. So there's a lot of hedges that come out several feet. And so it's like, it's not obvious it's a sidewalk, but I think it goes all the way up to the lower entrance to the cemetery, if I'm not mistaken. All right.
Yeah.
Well, just on the pedestrian
Sorry,
function.
I was giving Art the talk on.
Oh, my bad. My
yeah.
bad.
You both do know this is 100% federal funding. There's no leftover money. It doesn't.
Oh,
come
yeah.
to-
Yeah. I think it's my interest is not to save money. My interest is to get the right outcome. I think the question about what to do with the money was that was coming from Jacob.
On Taylor's conclusion here, you got to read the whole paragraph. As you know, the project originally stemmed from an intersection being a high crash location. While crashes do appear to have gone down, the geometry of the intersection is not ideal and still lends itself to potential crashes. The proposed addition of the left turn lane and realignment of Merchant Street are targeted towards mitigating the typical crash patterns that the intersection has experienced over the years. It failed on capacity, but doesn't fail on safety.
Oh yeah. And I think that's what I meant to be saying before when I said that he said that there was still a safety reason, and that's why I was saying that the current level of crashes don't seem to satisfy. Like, we have a lot of dangerous intersections in the city where we can say, like, if we look at the map of crashes, there are giant clusters in some places, and this is one where there's just a smattering. It's not to say, there's no intersection which is free of crashes, but this doesn't seem to be one where it doesn't seem to call out to me like this is where we need a safety intervention. But I think one of the things that I would like to raise is that safety, sometimes we end up seeing it through a very narrow lens. And I think it's important to say safety for whom. And one of the things that's important about this intersection is that it's an access to the cemetery from some pretty dense neighborhoods. And so from the neighborhoods that are on Merchant Street, like, that is the access that people get to their nearest area for recreation, which is walking around to the cemetery. And so to me, I think of when we add a lane, for the left turn lane, this is going to make crossing at this intersection much more difficult for pedestrians to negotiate. And so when I think about balance of safety, I think there's right now a notional idea that it's going to improve safety. But if we're talking about a rate of about 0.5 crashes per year for automobiles, I think that we probably need to bring our balance back toward what is the cost that happens to somebody who's struck when walking by a vehicle at this location if we make it less safe for them. Because of those 5 crashes that were at this location, they were all property damage only. None of them were injuries. And so we shouldn't even necessarily, I would say no one wants their car to be broken, but it's not actually a safety issue for your car to be broken. So when your person is broken, that's a safety issue. So yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I hear both you and Art on the safety concerns, and my question about reallocation of funding already kind of assigned for a left turn lane, if that could be used in a different way to enhance safety to make this more of an urban intersection. And I'm thinking of David Raphael this week, who is a landscape architect at Addison County, and has done projects all over the state, including the project in Danville, where I think is part of a Better Connections project, where as a village treatment, they did some traffic calming features and some islands, maybe even some bulb outs of something along Route 2 to signal that you're entering an urban place and that you need to slow down here. And a little bit of queuing on Maple Avenue to Merchant Street, to me, is a nice way to get people to slow down, so long as that they have the opportunity, that they're getting those signals from the design that they're entering an urban place, they're going through a gateway, they're going through a speed transition, more than just a sign on the speed sign. And so I'm curious if it might be possible to have a treatment like that really got people to slow down, and then allowed people to take that left or right turn on a better aligned Merchant Street, and at the same time start thinking about the pedestrian amenities that might be needed for that neighborhood. The last thing I want to see is more traffic, or to be more convenient for trucks or through drivers to see Merchant Street as a shortcut. And a left turn lane wouldn't necessarily do that, but I'm a little worried about that.
We did have an email. Oh, sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I know you might have a couple of people walk up there, but I didn't know the cemetery was a recreational area.
It is truthfully. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't hear what you just said.
What does the cemetery commission think about that?
Giuliano is not here, but I'm pretty sure that that's part of why the cemetery committee exists.
I don't think that the state, or you should put in, you don't have a sidewalk first, so you can't really have a crosswalk. And that's like building a bridge with a sidewalk, with no sidewalks on either side, on either end of the bridge. I mean, you wouldn't do that. You understand?
Well, I think so. I mean, I'm pretty sure we can have a crosswalk without a sidewalk. I don't think there's a requirement to have one without the other.
You're safe to cross the road, but you're not safe walking in the road.
I agree. This is a challenge that we face in general, but we have to make progress somewhere. Yeah, I'm totally with you. We had an email from a resident of the neighborhood around Merchant Street, and I was just going to try to find it. I forwarded it to Jake for the minutes, and I can hang on a second. They asked for me to include it in the meeting, and I don't know.
Would you like me to read that in the record?
If you could, I was just going to try to find it, and I was failing with my email. So yeah.
This was sent January today at 5 p.m. It says, hello, I live at 35 Long Street in Barrie and have driven the Merchant Street and Route 14 intersection literally thousands of times, twice a day, almost every day for 8 years. I've also walked it many times with my dog, crossing over from Hope Cemetery on Merchant Street to return from a long loop. From my home office window, I can also clearly see out across Cleary Street and watch cars on Merchant Street before the stop sign. People already speed horribly down that stretch of road, and changes to encourage more pass-through traffic will only make that problem worse. In all the times I've gone through the intersection, I've never found its current design lacking. It serves the traffic it does take well, and there is no need to increase capacity for traffic to encourage speeding drivers to cut through a residential neighborhood. I also believe strongly that enlarging this intersection, encouraging more pass-through traffic onto Merchant Street, will substantially impact my neighborhood in a negative way. Thank you, Amanda Gustin. And I'll say, I was over at Councilor Wozniak's house the other weekend. Got gosh, right, we were standing out in the front drive and just while we were there, a truck, I think it was a landscaping truck, it must have gone be 45, 50 miles per hour, ripping down Merchant Street. It drives me insane. It's a trigger point for me, but
And-
it's so frustrating to see, and I can certainly relate to this message from
Yeah,
Amanda.
I mean, the number of speeding cars that you can accept on your street when your kids are playing outside is, it's effectively zero. And the question is, are there things we can do to make it better? It seems to me like getting rid of the left turn lane is one of those steps, that there's so much that's good about this project that we should keep. But it would be wonderful if we could do it while not contributing to the stuff that's making our city worse. And so, I mean, I think that what Jake is talking about, I mean, it's terrible to experience it, but also like when we're sending more through traffic down the streets, I mean, Merchant Street sees 2,000 or so vehicles a day. When there's something like 50 developed lots on Merchant Street, clearly it's being used. I mean, as Bill pointed out, it's a designated town highway. It's really being used as a bigger highway than it is, and that detracts from the property values in that neighborhood. And then where does the money come from to fix all this stuff? So I think that it would be great to get the ball rolling in terms of finding out what Bill thinks about this design. But I also think that it would be worthwhile to have a motion in terms of what the committee wants to see happen if there is something like that, so that we can send it to council, get council to consider this as well, because the state wants to build this. And I don't want to be in the way of getting this happening and getting this done on time. If there's a change that has to happen, it really makes sense to get that done sooner rather than later, it seems like, because if we waited until the summertime, I mean, don't they want to start construction on this next year?
I think the scheduled date is 2024.
Okay, year after next. Mhm.
At one point, it was considered for 2023, but got pushed back.
Yeah, but I recognize that nobody wants to have their project suddenly change under them. And this is short notice for for the state's construction projects. But nonetheless, I mean, it feels like we've got the time to get this the way that's going to give us the best outcome for our community. Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I would just say that I have no problem saying that let's not accept free money for things that are going to make our community worse off instead of better off. And if that's the recommendation of this committee and the sentiment, and I suspect if we did outreach on the Merchant Street residents, that I'm not sure how many are aware of this, but they likely may have some concerns and feedback, but they're not here, and we have to move forward. But I would rather accept no federal dollars if they're going to harm our city. And I kind of feel like a new left turn lane there could be harmful to that neighborhood as a non-expert.
Yeah, but I think that they can also improve the design, and we'll get the benefit. But not exactly in its current form. One of the things I feel like I've heard this from more than one person, at least one resident of Merchant Street has said, this is too much. We should just make Merchant Street one way out toward Maple Avenue. And that would really undermine, I mean, like if you have got a left turn lane to nowhere, this will be a terrible embarrassment. I don't think anyone wants to, I don't think it would actually happen that we could make that street one way, because I mean, it will impact too many people along that street. But if the level of frustration is such that, people do want to do really traumatic things, then it seems like we can get ahead of that by making the design a little bit less amenable to what the residents don't want, which is lots of through traffic. Yeah, go ahead, Art.
These people that walk their dogs in the cemetery, there's a sign there, isn't there? It says no dogs allowed.
You know, there are old signs, but dogs are allowed in the cemeteries now, as long as they are far away from the monuments.
20, at least 20 feet from a monument.
So I think one of the things that I'm hearing, and I want to try to understand this better, is why we think the left turn lane actually increases traffic on Merchant Street, and why, and particularly, one of the questions that I have is, Merchant Street is a through route for people who work downtown, truly. And so they come in Merchant Street and they go down the hill right into kind of the heart of the city, rather than going down Summer, or going down Maple and coming to Summer. Essentially, there's no traffic lights, no delays. So Merchant Street, and in fact, its very name suggests what its history has been, and that was, it was an important route into the city. But at the same time, I don't contest our need to deal with speed, but speed is a different issue. And if the accident rate doesn't warrant the left turn lane, then it makes a lot of sense to eliminate it. I can understand we really need to pose that question in earnest, so that we don't just, let's go with it. Project includes a lot of other benefits that we could realize, even if it didn't have a left turn lane.
I completely agree.
From stormwater improvements, plus some safety improvements in terms of alignment, and really much improved sight distances. So there are benefits there. The left turn lane is really to deal with, in particular, rear end crashes on 14 South into the city. If it isn't warranted for that, then it poses a question, why do it? And the ability to change the plans now to narrow it, everything could be done as currently designed, with the exception of where the curb placement goes and the width of the street. So we aren't asking for a huge change if that's the consent of the council. I think it highlights the need to ask the question, and I come back to that change in the formula for warrants, and knowing that there were changes in design standards, and they were changes that involved specifically for protecting communities. So it's an important change. I just need to dig in a little further and to be able to verify that that's the correct conclusion. But I don't think that should stop the TAC from taking a position at all.
Yeah, so I think I would like both things to happen. If that, I mean, I think that for you to dig in and say, like, you know, hey, this is warranted, this isn't warranted. You're uniquely qualified to do that. We cannot. Yeah, what I would think is, I would like for us to request that the city council, that we forward the information that we have to city council, to ask city council to request VTrans to remove the left turn lane onto Merchant. I agree with you, Bill. I don't think that this left turn lane will necessarily increase the rate of traffic turning onto Merchant, but our goal is partly to decrease it because of the remember, like, it was a year and a half ago or something, where we were talking about the network of streets through that neighborhood is bearing lots of traffic, and there are a ton of knobs that we can turn to try to control that and to get it. To me, it seems like this is one of those really crucial knobs, and if we can do it in a way that's not going to impact people's safety, like out of proportion, then I would love to be able to fix that. So if the committee is open to sending this information to city council and requesting that they ask VTrans to give us a design without the left turn lane, keeping all of the other benefits, then I think, well, I don't know. I'm the chair. It is a little strange, but so I'm going to make a motion that we do this. You know, there's no formal reason I shouldn't. So my motion that I'm bringing is that we will forward the information that we currently have to City Council with the request that City Council review it and then ask VTrans to provide us with a new design that does not have a left turn lane onto Merchant Avenue. And that's my only request. I think there are other changes we could imagine as being that's the end of my motion. But I'm just saying there are other changes that I could imagine being beneficial to the design that I think are not essential. But this one, I think we can make a difference. So with that motion, if
Would you accept a friendly amendment to
I certainly would go for it.
bracket, just to add the sidewalks? I mean, if you're doing the intersection at that time, even if they don't connect, and that's possible, I think it's a reasonable ask. I say that knowing that, you know, as in Milton-
City council can decide what to do with it. So I think,
Yeah.
so you mean a sidewalk along Maple?
Yeah, along the whatever improvements would be made along Maple and Merchant, the inside corner.
It seems to me like this kind of extends the scope, because the scope of the design doesn't reach that far down the hill. And so it seems to me like that might be, so I'm gonna maybe lean on Bill before I say this as part of the motion. It seems to me like that change to the design kind of stretches the area that they're working on. And I don't know what the actual scope of this project. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I don't know what would be typical for VTrans to consider in the scope of an intersection improvement.
I'm just saying, if it's possible, you know, it's certainly something that wouldn't hurt to ask, and it would make sense to do while you're doing the other improvements. And I think there are examples around the state where, you know, the communities that ask VTrans for the nice things often get the nice things. And, you know, I'm thinking about Route 7 improvements in Addison County where there are berms and beautiful plantings and clearly all intended to mitigate the impacts of road improvements on US Route 7 in Addison County. I'm not sure communities in Washington County are being as assertive, and maybe we're not getting the same level of quality. And if it's possible to ask, and they may say no, but why not ask?
So let's say if the motion continued by saying and consider an extension of the existing Maple Avenue sidewalk to the intersection with Merchant Street. So to make it clear that this is not a explicitly part of the request for a change, but that if they see fit, then we would be open to seeing it.
Chairman, I think we might, I don't know how long that gap is. I'm just talking about where the intersection improvements are being made, that a sidewalk be put in. Even if it's a disconnected section.
Maybe that's
Because
what I was
eventually-
misunderstanding. Okay.
Because eventually there would be, I
So-
think there could be a connection.
All right. So include sidewalk on the Merchant Avenue side of Maple Street.
Yeah, and I say that as,
Yeah.
you know, having
Okay.
been planning director in Milton, we built many disconnected sidewalks through development review exactions and in state right of way and town right of way. And incrementally they've been connected. Initially it doesn't make sense, but the life span of a really well-built sidewalk can be 50 years. So I think it's worth,
All right.
if you're fixing an intersection, do the sidewalk, even if it's disconnected.
Yeah. So consider sidewalk on the Merchant Street side of Maple Avenue. Is that?
Yeah.
Art, go for it.
Yeah, well, I'd like to add,
Hold on.
if you're gonna, your sidewalk, you're gonna have street lighting, too, all the way up.
I think I misunderstood what Jake was suggesting when I had said that it would be along there. What he was suggesting was just installing a bit of disconnected sidewalk in the area of the intersection where there's currently lighting, and that it would be on us to make that connection in the future if that was the direction that we went. But it gives an anchor point for potentially extending that. But that's my understanding. Does that sound okay to you? All right, the camera turned to look at me, so I can't see you.
If we speak here, the camera will recorrect and look at us. So I'm talking just to get it to come back. There we go.
Michael, I apologize, but I was under the assumption that the whole plan from V-Trans for this intersection and everything that comes along with it was priority to put that left turn in. If we are just negating the left turn, are we giving them the opportunity to just pull that you had spoken to? We're not going to take funds to have a negative effect against our city. But I just want to put it out there that I hope this isn't giving them the opportunity to say, well, if you don't want this left turn, then we do nothing for you.
No, I don't think that I don't. So I think one, they have the ability to just say no to our request. But this project is planned. It was Jake who said it was taking the position that if it makes the city worse, that we shouldn't take free money. And I was my interest is to see this project happen, and I would love to see it happen with this change to it. If V-Trans, so when Taylor came to talk to us from V-Trans, he said if we want to make a change to it, the thing to do is to tell City Council and have City Council make the decision about whether they're going to request that change from V-Trans, and then in the end, like V-Trans is going to. They're going to decide how they're going to do the intersection because it is a state route. What we're doing is saying from our elected officials, they're making the request to V-Trans to say, this is what we want. And V-Trans will very likely take that seriously, but it's not we're not putting them in a position where we can't force our will on them. That's my understanding. And
I understand.
Bill's nodding. So the hope here is to not to do this the right way, to do it early enough that it is not messing people up, but also to make a change to hopefully make the intersection work better for the neighborhood and for the downhill traffic on on Maple Avenue. Because as Jake was saying, controlling the speed a little bit through keeping this intersection small, because the new alignment will require people to slow down a little bit more before they make the turn. This could have the benefit of, as he was saying, being the beginning of a gateway where we are communicating to drivers that they're entering an urban area where it's time to not go highway speed. That they were going 40 miles per hour before. They saw the 25 mile per hour sign, but oh, come on, does that really mean 25 miles per hour? This intersection, hopefully we could get it to a place where it's one of those signals that's saying, you know what, I think it really does mean 25 miles per hour. At least that's, that is my hope. So anyway, to restate, there's a motion, which is that the Transportation Advisory Committee recommend to City Council, we're going to provide them with the information that we have, ask them to review the information, and then request from V-Trans a change to the design to say, to remove the left turn lane and to consider installing sidewalk on the Merchant Street side of Maple Avenue. So that is the motion. Is there a second? It'd be funny if we went this far. That's it.
You're muted, Jay. Were you speaking to the committee?
Oh, I'll second the motion, but it looks like it might not be a motion that passes.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Well, I think that it would have to be all four of us voting in favor anyhow, because that's what would constitute a majority of the actual committee. And so if we're not all in favor of it, well, we'll just let it go. But in any case, yeah, so there's a second. Any further discussion of this motion? No, not hearing any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand, I guess. Yeah.
Aye.
Okay. And that is yeah, all opposed?
Aye.
That is art. All right, so my understanding is that this means our motion does not pass. And we will either let city council take it up on their own, or that ship has sailed. All right. Thanks everybody for going through this whole process. Our next item on the agenda is to consider the vehicle weight limit recommendations. So Bill started us out a little bit on this before. I think probably we could go through the beginning part a little quicker, as most of us were here. But I will yield to you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So earlier I just talked about the fact that V-Trans has labeled our town highways in different classes. There are class 1s, which are typically state highways or national highways that go through. Class 2s, which are something like a collector, although not always formally a designated collector street. And then there are class 3 town highways, which typically serve local purposes. And again, essentially residential streets would be class 3s. The language in the statute suggests specifically that class 1s should have a 24,000 pound limit. And that 24,000 pound limit is further interpreted by the statute to mean that 5-axle semi-trailer trucks can actually weigh 80,000 pounds on a 24,000 pound road. On a 16,000 pound road, that weight gets cut back to 2/3 of that 80,000. I believe the number is 56,730 pounds. So tractor trailers couldn't go on those streets unless they were lightly loaded. The second element to this is that because of the axle weight ratings, most vehicles could still traverse our residential streets as class 3s, even with a 16,000 pound limit. And one of my concerns that I looked at specifically was fuel oil dealers that have invested in 3-axle trucks that normally have a load capacity of 56,000 pounds. When that's scaled back, it comes out 44,000 and something. And that number typically means they might have to carry 500 gallons less than a full load. And so that's not a huge impact, even if the fuel dealer is running a 3,500 gallon or 4,000 gallon truck. So my concerns for class 3s really is very, very low as far as it having a negative commercial effect on our city. So I think class 3 town highways are a good place for us to target a pilot program. And we should actually make that pilot include an examination of enforcement techniques over the course of the next year. So rather than trying to do all of it at once, that we would pick some targeted areas, and perhaps they would be off of some of these collector streets to try to prevent them from leaving collector streets, and see how that program works. So our other option would be to label the community a 16,000-pound load limit, except as otherwise posted, and then post the class 1 and class 2 highways. And I believe that's actually fewer signs when we get right down to it. So Jake had offered that you might look at it differently, and I think that's actually a less expensive way. I'm afraid it might be a little bit more confusing, but I think it would be fully enforceable. And that's really the name of the game. So those are the two options. We could pick a subset of some class 3 town highways, cover an area, and then look to see how that works over the course of the year. Or we could try doing the whole community by saying we're a 16,000-pound load limit except as posted, and post up to the state limit on the class 1 and class 2 town highways. That's kind of the short version.
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, it seems appealing to post the entire city, but I guess that's is it a big change to do it once? And I recognize that what you're saying about it being potentially more confusing is that it could result in surprises. So, but I think, I mean, I don't know. I have to, what are the downsides, I guess?
I think one of the downsides, and it's an intangible, is that there's going to be a reaction that Barry is averse to commerce. And it really isn't that, but for a trucker driving through to see a sign that says he's essentially going to be overweight is going to strike a chord of terror. And 500 feet further up, he takes a sigh of relief and says, oh, they don't mean me here. And truly, it's just, I don't know how we take that. I don't think you can take that away, because I think you have to post and set the standard, and then you post the exception. If I put them on the same post, I think it'll defeat the awareness of that 16,000-pound limit.
Yeah, I mean, is there a possibility that that sort of that moment of like, am I overweight, is actually helps sort of like spread the word? Or I mean, I this is beyond my knowledge.
And mine as well, because I'm trying to look at a sociological phenomenon, and I'm not talented or skilled at that. So I can reach out to VTrans for more information about actually posting the entire community downward, and then up posting the class 1 highways and class 2s, and see if they have any communities that have done that. Again, it makes a lot of sense, particularly if you have truck routes or something like that running through your community, to look at trying to keep them on those main roads. Immediately, it comes to mind that I should be talking with Virgins as an example, where they have a major truck route through their downtown, and they have several streets that actually can be used as alternate routes, and they're really not designed for that. And I don't know how Virgins is managing that, but it's something I should look into. Burlington would be another example where Route 7 goes through it and crosses over.
Go ahead, Jake.
Well, I think this is a really helpful summary, and it seems like there are a lot of details to learn about in terms of average loads of fuel dealers and solid waste haulers. But I think the important thing is always to start with why. Why would this be something compelling for the city to do? And for me, it comes back that we have a lot of truck traffic going all over the city. It is eroding the livability of many neighborhoods. A lot of it's through truck traffic. It's not a residential service truck like a fuel dealer or a garbage truck. And I think, reasonable exemptions for any ordinance that established to regulate this should have reasonable exemptions for kind of the residential service vehicles that would be typical. My interest is the through trucking through neighborhoods when they could be on a class 1 highway, and the cost that it imposes upon city taxpayers to address the wear and tear by these vehicles. And about 2/3 of the grand list is residential real estate, and 1/3 is commercial real estate. And even some of the through truck traffic isn't even doing any commerce in the city. They're just using our roads and they're not paying anything for it. And so I kind of like, I like whatever enforcement's going to work. I think the speed enforcement effort that recently occurred, although a good effort, has not been effective and it's not stuck. We're back to just where we were at the beginning now on Hill Street again, and with no noticeable change in behavior. So I'm kind of curious is there a way for like a release valve where if you set a limit at say 16,000 and you say the city is posted at 16,000 except class 1 unless otherwise posted, and they see the sign that that all state highways are above 16,000, if there might be a mechanism to say, well, you need to get a permit otherwise. If you want to exceed that limit, you get a permit. We have a form on the website. You pay the fee, and that goes to our highway fund, and we use that to offset the impact you're having on our streets. And if you have that annual permit or monthly permit, whatever the structure would be, that you'd have permission to go overweight, but you're gonna contribute your fair share, so that it's not all on the backs of the city taxpayers. So that's my why behind all this, and I think whatever's done has to be really smart. There needs to be a clear hierarchy, to the chair's point in prior email about the street network, and maybe even more refinement than just class 1, 2, and 3, and reasonable exemptions for residential trucking, and perhaps some fee-based mechanism to allow an overweight truck to get a permit, so long as they're contributing their fair share to our transportation system, because the gas tax ain't cutting it.
I've got a question. So if we set the limit for the city, does this give us the leeway to have ordinance to create those exceptions? Do we say, yes, there's a posted limit, and later city council can make adjustments to say, here are the exceptions to this posted limit? And this is a question for Bill about we're registering this with the state. Once it's registered, do we have the authority to then say, yeah, we're letting this heavier truck on this road, that's on us?
So the city does retain the right to allow overweight loads. So if we did post it for 16,000, we would still have authority to increase it. I apologize, I didn't look at the ordinance language. I think there's wording there that could be enabling, but I actually need to look at it and make certain that the traffic section actually addresses this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, oh, sorry.
I will follow up on that.
Yeah, I think with that in mind, I would be in favor of if it's feasible, to have a citywide weight limit with the exceptions for the class 1 and 2 highways, as you know, because there's a deadline for doing this registration. And if we wanted to figure out, a better hierarchy, it's not going to be before this deadline. So I would be in favor of the citywide weight limit that then council can make adjustments to, as needed in terms of, let's say, oh yes, there are these conditions under which the weight limit needs to be raised, but at least we have the authority to enforce, once it's registered. But I'd basically leave that in your hands is my thinking. So I'm not gonna try to have I wouldn't bring that as a motion to try to have that be advisement. My interest is to, I state a preference and to leave it in your hands, Bill.
Well, I thank you for that help. It is certainly something I can pursue between now and the February 10th filing date. And I can actually take the sentiment of the Transportation Advisory Committee under consideration as we look at how to do it. But I understand the beauty of it's simple and it covers everything we want.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Art.
Bill, what other class 2 you said were open streets?
So the class 2 town highways are Merchant Street,
Yeah.
Hill Street,
Yeah.
Quarry Street.
Right now, you might want to make an exception because all the tractor trailers are going to go up Quarry.
I can't quite hear you. Sorry. Could you speak up a little bit?
That's in Marytown.
So Art was pointing out that the state has actually directed heavy truck traffic down, or I should say up Route 14 northward, and then up Quarry Street to get to Barrytown. So that is a preferred truck route, and it's signed at Vermont 63 in that way. So I think Art was just offering that Quarry Street has been intended to be, at the heavier load limit.
Yeah, that's right.
Especially that. After it gets in.
All right. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to add to vehicle weight limits? All right. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, is that what you said? I'll make a motion.
Oh, I was no, I was just saying, was there anything else anyone was adding for vehicle weight limits? And I was gonna move on without a motion for that. But if I just didn't hear what you said. Sorry. You guys hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, Chair, could you just summarize the advisement and so I have that?
Yeah, I don't think I didn't give advisement. I don't think the committee did exactly. Yeah, what I had said as my perspective was that it seemed useful to have there be a citywide weight limit with exceptions on the class 1 and 2 highways. With then council has the ability to grant exceptions as needed. And I said that I was leaving it in Bill's hands to determine whether he thought that was feasible or not. And so I was saying, rather than trying to give advisement on something that I don't think I know the answer about, I was just saying, I think based on what I've heard, that makes sense to me. I trust you.
I think the only other thing that I think about is that just those classifications might be inadequate to recognize where our industrial zones are, and where in what class 2 roads that may be principally residential and serve other municipalities, and may still not make sense for to flag as a trucking route for heavy trucks. So I would encourage the department to think about, really refining that approach to think about where are there functionally dependent uses for through trucking, and do we want to make
It seems like there's, it
all
seems like there's crosstalk in the room, guys. Excuse me, in council. It seems like there's crosstalk in the room. It's hard to know who's talking if other people are talking. Sorry to interrupt, Jake.
No, I just think that maybe the VTrans classifications might not be correct for for the local needs, and so it seems like a even more refined approach might be needed.
Yeah, and I think the difficulty is potentially the timing. That I think it seems really, if it's possible to identify those things before submitted, that could be that. Yeah, it seems beneficial. I don't know what's actually possible.
I do think it's something that we can always amend the program when we can complete that work. Yet if we have I'm going to characterize it as that transportation network analysis that shows both where we're trying to route commercial traffic, where we're trying to prevent it and make the traffic limited to residential use.
Right.
By clarifying those locations, there can be a refinement to this, and there might even be legs of a street that were posted down or up as appropriate to reach those goals for our truck network.
Yeah, I mean, it may make sense to focus on posting the class 1 highways and to recognize that there are other routes that will be appropriate for trucking, but that we don't necessarily need to put those signs up right away. And we'll figure out how to do that. I mean, I'm trying to figure out some way to address like the concern that we start, if we're just concerned about Merchant Street and we're like, Merchant Street, let's make it better. And let's put up the you can take your heavy trucks down Merchant Street signs. We might not, it might not be totally consistent. But so maybe I'll amend what I was saying is that I'm enthusiastic about posting on class 1. And then we do what we need to do other than that. All right. Oh, go ahead.
That is helpful, and again, the goal here is to start the process and then to make improvements as we learn more about its effect.
Yes, and thanks for bringing this. Is there anything else on vehicle weight limits before we move on? All right. In that case, our next step is to confirm the date of our next meeting. I'm gonna say I won't do it for this meeting, but I'm curious what people think about changing our meeting time. It seems to me like 6:30 to 8 is kind of late, especially for staff. So since we're not there, the full membership isn't here, I'll hold off on trying to make that change, I think, because I'd like to hear from everyone. But I'm interested in what people think about meeting earlier. Yeah, go ahead. All right.
We go to the senior meal over at the Elks on happens to be the same night that we have it here, our meeting. And I get done at 6 or quarter after over there, I come right over here.
All right, so it works for you then this time. All right. Well, we don't have to change it.
It's just my point.
Yeah, go ahead, Eli.
I'm fine with it how it is now. I just prefer it not to go any later. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Well, we don't need to belabor it. I just wanted to bring it up. I don't know what the historical reasons for it being at this time were. But yeah, let's, I won't make it any later now, but continue to talk about it. But if somebody has a suggestion about changing the time in the future, I'm amenable. Is February the 16th a good date for us to have our next meeting. That is what's scheduled. All right. That our next meeting will be on February the 16th. Does anyone have anything for roundtable this evening?
No,
Go
I just
ahead.
jump in and say
sorry.
it really does seem like there's a new uptick in speeding on Hill Street again. I mean, when the speed camera's here, it makes some difference, but routinely people ripping up at 50 miles an hour. The noise amplifying vehicles up there. I'm not sure if Deputy Chief Eastman's going to be continue to show up here, but I'm just wondering if a police solution is the right solution, given that the approach hasn't led to any behavioral shift. So I think we're back to the drawing table.
But by way of explanation, Deputy Chief Eastman is actually out and has COVID. That's why.
Sorry to hear that. Art, were you about to talk also? I thought maybe I saw that you were about to say something when Jacob started talking. I wanted to make sure I didn't leave you out.
I pass.
Okay, all right. I misinterpreted. So you're very small on my screen. Sorry. Yeah, I also don't have anything to add this evening. Joshua, do you have anything to bring to roundtable, or should we take off?
I do not have anything to add. I think the city cleanup seems to be going well this year, so I'm glad for that.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I would hear a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, so I can make a motion for that.
All right.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and see you next month.
I'll get you the minutes shortly.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Valentine's Day.
You too.